Okay, so you've probably seen the images, right? These massive walls of flame just ripping through Southern California. It's honestly terrifying.
Yeah, and it really puts things in perspective when you realize we're not just talking about wildfires here. We're talking about these mega fires. I mean, entire neighborhoods are being wiped out.
Yeah, and we're seeing it all over the news, right?
Yeah.
Like AP News, CBS. I even saw some stuff from the BBC about it.
Yeah, this isn't just a local story anymore. It's getting international attention. And I think, well, what we really want to do today is kind of go beyond those headlines.
Right, because those can just be so overwhelming.
Exactly. I mean, where do you even start? So we're going to take a deep dive, look at some of the facts from different sources, and kind of, try to make sense of all this.
Yeah, and hopefully we can even answer some questions about what we can do, moving forward.
Okay, well, first things first, let's talk about these fires. I mean, there are 4 major ones burning right now.
Oh, 4.
Yeah. We've got the Palisades fire, the Eaton fire, the Sunset fire, and the Hearst fire.
Wow. Okay, so the Palisades fire, that's the one that's really been in the news lately, right?
Yeah, and that one's burning in Pacific Palisades, and it's huge, over 21,000 acres already. And they've only got like 8% of it contained.
8%. So that means it's still pretty much raging out of control, right?
Pretty much. Then there's the Eaton fire. That's near Pasadena. It's not as big, but it's still a big problem. Something like 16 and a half square miles.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's still really big.
It is, and unfortunately, there have already been 5 fatalities from that fire.
5. Oh gosh, that's just awful. And I know we're seeing a lot of people being evacuated too, right?
Absolutely. The latest numbers I saw were over 200,000 residents under mandatory evacuation orders, and then another 166,000 on high alert, just waiting to see if they need to leave.
Gosh, it must be so stressful, just not knowing what's going to happen. If you'll even have a home to go back to.
Yeah, and even if you do, I mean, some of the photos I've seen, it's just utter devastation. I mean, houses reduced to rubble, everything gone.
Yeah. It's just heartbreaking to see. And even if you're not directly in the path of the fire, I mean, the air quality must be terrible.
That's awful. There are something like 17 million people under air quality warnings right now. So yeah, even if you're miles away from the flames, you're still dealing with the consequences.
Yeah, so it's like this ripple effect, right? It just goes outward and outward.
Exactly.
But I have to wonder, I mean, what even starts these fires in the first place? Is it like, are these just freak accidents, or is there something more to it?
Well, I mean, they're always the usual suspects. Downed power lines, someone tossing a cigarette out their car window, lightning strikes.
Right.
But I think the bigger question here is, are those causes happening more often, or are these fires just burning hotter and faster than they used to?
Right. Because it does feel like we're seeing these mega fires more and more frequently, And I've heard people say that climate change is a major factor in all this.
And they're right. It's not just a coincidence. The scientists are pretty clear on this. Climate change is contributing to these mega fires.
So it's not just about, like, summers getting a little bit hotter. We're talking about something much bigger, like a fundamental shift in our environment that's making these disasters more likely.
Exactly. And it's making us really have to rethink how we live in these fire-prone areas.
Right. Because, I mean, what can people do? Are they just, sitting ducks waiting for the next fire to erupt?
Well, no. I mean, there are things we can do, like being proactive, creating what they call defensible space around your home.
Defensible space, what does that mean?
Basically, it means clearing vegetation, using fire-resistant landscaping techniques, just kind of creating a buffer zone around your house.
Oh, okay. So it's about, like, working with nature rather than against it.
Exactly.
But even with all that, I mean, these fires are still breaking out. And they're so massive, it just seems impossible to fight something like that.
Well, it's definitely not easy. I mean, we've got firefighters from all over the country coming in to help, even Navy helicopters dropping water and fire retardant.
Wow.
But they're running into all sorts of challenges, dry hydrants, power outages, even like aging water systems that can't handle the demand.
Gosh, it's like trying to put out a bonfire with a garden hose.
Yeah, kind of. And then you add in things like the Santa Ana lines. I mean, those can reach up to 100 miles per hour, whipping up the flames. And the drought we've been having, it's just turned everything into tinder.
Oh yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
It is.
So, I mean, it all just feels so overwhelming, But in the midst of all this devastation, are there any, like, glimmers of hope?
Well, I'll say this. It's been incredible to see the communities come together. Like, Uber is offering free rides to evacuation centers, and you've got all these local organizations providing food, shelter, mental health support. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's like even in the face of all this loss, people are finding ways to help each other. It really shows the resilience of the human spirit.
It really does.
But I mean, let's be real, the economic toll of these fires is going to be enormous.
Oh, absolutely. The early estimates are putting it around $57 billion. I mean, that's more than the GDP of a lot of countries.
Wow.
And that's just the initial impact. We're talking about industries being disrupted, insurance claims, tourism taking a hit. This is going to have ripple effects across the entire country.
Yeah. This isn't just a California problem. It's going to impact all of us in some way.
And, it's not just the immediate costs we have to think about. These fires, they're going to have a huge impact on rebuilding efforts, too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, where do you even begin to rebuild after something like this? Are we just going to rebuild the same way we always have, even though we know these fires are becoming more frequent and more intense?
Well, that's the big question, right? I mean, we can't just keep doing the same things and expecting a different outcome. You have to remember, a lot of these homes that were destroyed, they were built before we had modern fire-resistant building codes.
Oh, so they weren't built to withstand these kinds of fires?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
So we need to rethink how we rebuild. It's not just about patching things up, it's about systemic change.
So what are some of the, I don't know, like the new approaches to rebuilding that are being considered?
Well, there's this whole movement towards fire-wise construction and landscaping.
Wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about using fire-resistant materials, creating those defensible spaces around homes that we were talking about, even rethinking how communities are laid out to minimize risk.
So it's like a whole new way of thinking about how we build and live in these fire-prone areas.
Exactly.
But I think it's also important to remember, that there's a human side to all of this. We've talked about the economic costs, but the emotional toll must be immense.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about people who've lost everything, their homes, their belongings, their sense of security. It's a level of trauma that's hard to even comprehend.
Yeah, like wound that you can't even see.
Yeah.
And it's not just those who've lost their homes. I imagine even just living under the constant threat of wildfire, that has to take a psychological toll.
Oh, for sure. That constant fear, that anxiety, it's exhausting. And let's not forget about the first responders, the firefighters who are putting their lives on the line every day. They're carrying a heavy burden too.
Yeah, they're the heroes in all of this.
They really are.
So how do we even begin to address the mental health needs of everyone affected by these fires?
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that it's a real issue, and then make sure mental health resources are readily available. That means therapy, counseling, support groups, anything that can help people process their trauma and begin to heal.
Yeah. It's about providing that long-term support, not just a Band-Aid solution.
Exactly.
And, this all kind of brings us back to climate change. I mean, these fires are just a wake-up call, right? A glimpse into what our future might look like if we don't take action.
I think that's a fair assessment. Climate change is here, it's happening now, and it's going to continue to fuel these kinds of disasters.
It's pretty scary, honestly. Yeah. So, what can we do? What concrete steps can we take, both as individuals and as a society, to try and turn things around?
Well, on a policy level, we need to be pushing for aggressive action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, invest in renewable energy, support sustainable land management practices, all the things that the scientists have been telling us for years.
Right, so that's kind of the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
But what about just in our own lives, at the individual level? Is there anything we can do that will actually make a difference?
Absolutely. Even small changes can have a big impact. Reduce your own carbon footprint. Support businesses that are committed to sustainability. Speak up. Advocate for change in your community.
It's about making climate change a priority, right? Not just something we talk about, but something we actually act on.
Exactly.
And, as tragic as these fires are, I do see some glimmers of hope, like the way communities are rallying together to help each other. The generosity, the compassion, the resilience. It's really inspiring.
It really is. It shows that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can shine through. And it's that spirit that gives me hope that we can overcome these challenges and build a more sustainable future.
Yeah, it's amazing to see people coming together like that.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, what will it take for us to bring that same energy, that same urgency to fighting climate change before it gets even worse,
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? We've seen what these fires can do, and we know, the science is clear, that climate change is only going to make things worse. So we need to start treating this like the crisis that it is.
So what can we actually do? Besides the policy stuff, what can we do in our own lives to make a difference?
Well, think about your carbon footprint. Could you drive less? Maybe try biking or walking or taking public transportation more often?
Yeah, like those little everyday choices, right?
Exactly. And think about the products you buy. Are they energy efficient? Are they made by companies that are trying to be sustainable? And don't forget, you have a voice. Talk to your elected officials. Support organizations that are fighting climate change.
So it's about making it a priority,
Right.
Not just talking about it, but actually doing something about it.
Exactly.
And, as awful as these fires are, maybe, just maybe, they can be a wake-up call for all of us.
I hope so. Because we've seen how strong and resilient people can be. And that same strength and resilience, that's what we need to fight climate change and build a better future.
A future where we're not constantly battling these mega fires.
Exactly.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today. We hope you found this deep dive informative and, well, maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Yeah, we all have a part to play in this.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay safe and stay informed.